Message from the President. Hello everyone, welcome to all those that have attended Student Council. I hope everyone has a good and productive time and that you take many ideas away to improve your student experience. Regrettably, I am in a position where I have to submit my apologies for Council as I have been signed off work for the next week on medical leave. It goes without saying that to coordinate Students' Association activities takes a significant amount of effort. With the current resource situation at UHISA, there is a great deal of strain on sabbatical officers. We don't try to coordinate things where all the work goes through us. We want to facilitate students to organise the changes needed at certain aspects of the UHI experience. The duties that are placed on sabbatical officers to work with the university are considerable. Officers who are elected are chosen by the student body based on their manifesto policies and vision for the association, not appointed to fill a skill sets criteria to maintain the day-to-day running and baseline functioning of the association. There are many activities and responsibilities that are placed on UHISA to perform with the university that it's simply unfeasible for the full-time officers to coordinate on their own. Our duties we are expected to perform already exceed what we have the capacity to do, and this is before we get to perform the duties which we are elected to do by students. There must be structures in place at a Students' Association to ensure that its success doesn't depend on the additional skills of the officers, such as admin, graphic design and web development. The Students' Association needs continuity and a flow of knowledge. It shouldn't have to restart itself when new officers come in. That is what we currently rely on, and it is damaging for student engagement at UHI, and why we have asked for an intervention of over £200,000, including full-time staff and additional officer positions, subject to approval at this Student Council in next year's block grant to change this. There is an SFC-funded project underway to look at student representation and make recommendations for a new framework for 2015. However, this does not help the here and now, and if this situation continues, I am doubtful that we can continue to perform as an active Students' Association for the duration of the next academic year. Recently, this strain has impacted on my health. My situation isn't new to the student movement. Sabbatical officers face a threat to their mental health and are victims of their own ambition for the Students' Association to do the very best for their members. There is a phenomenon amongst sabbatical officers called #Sablife. This normalises the idea that a typical sabbatical officer performs 14-hour days, sleeps in the office and has no social life. This is not acceptable for any person in any line of work. The institution has a responsibility as much as this council to ensure that the Students' Association is running effectively. There needs to be structures and resources for UHISA to ensure that the sabbatical officers and student members' ideas become activity for the association. This shouldn't come at the expense of any individual's health and well-being. I found it far too challenging to carry out my role based in Oban, and I'm now having to consider moving to Inverness to take up my second term after re-election. This is to protect my health because I am physically and mentally feeling the strain of the impact of travel I'm expected to perform, often outside of working hours, as a president on top of the additional commitments that come with the job. This is hugely problematic for the university and it's a decision I shouldn't be forced into making. We have had constructive talks with Crichton Lang about the future of UHISA, but the situation is exacerbated to the point where action is now needed to prevent there being serious issues with sabbatical officers who have the will to succeed but currently not the capacity. I am going to take time to ensure I am ready to come back to work and I shall recharge my batteries. This bad news lies amongst a lot of positivity for UHISA, and it was really difficult for me to choose not to attend. I am very grateful for all students that have attended, to those who have given up their free time to organise this weekend's event, and to our guests from outside UHI. Have a great weekend, be positive, and I'll look forward to seeing you all when I'm back. That is the report that Rachel's given me to present. Nobody else in this room knew the content of it before, and I didn't until she emailed me at the weekend, but I'm happy to collate any comments that anyone might have on that or any other issues relating to the President's position. I can relay to Rachel when it's appropriate to do so after she's feeling a bit better. So I'll open it to the floor. Hi. Jude?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for everyone in this room, and this should be minuted, that everyone wishes Rachel the best, and I hope that she manages to get a hold on things as soon as possible. And I know, as a few people in this room, probably the person at the podium and the two lovely people over there, know that being a sabbatical officer is horrendously stressful. There were times last year where I was in a position like Rachel now, where I just couldn't see what was going to happen in the very near future. And fortunately, I had lovely people to help me through it. And now I look back on it and think, wow, what a great experience. On the other hand, as much as I appreciate and I agree with pretty much everything Rachel has said in that report, I think from the point of view of Student Council and accountability, we need to see that that was not an accountability report. I didn't see anything in there about what our Student President has done in the last, well, however many months have passed since last Student Council, because I don't go to executive meetings, I don't see her monthly reports. So I'm totally in the dark, apart from what I've heard informally from other people. I don't know what she's done. So I would really like a public report in terms of accountability to be posted up on the UHISA website as soon as she gets back. I hope that's not unfair, and again, I wish Rachel all the best, and I hope she's feeling better soon.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for allowing me to comment. I think I have to comment about some of the content of Rachel's statement. Yeah, sorry, I can't do two things at once. Here we go. I'd first of all absolutely echo Judith's comments about our best wishes for Rachel. Rachel's a lovely person, and we wish her only well. Her situation, we're very aware of her situation, and there's been a number of interventions to support Rachel, and we hope that she gets well and comes back as quickly as possible. Some people in this room have been involved with UHISA for a long time, and they'll know the commitment of my little team to UHISA, and the university is committed to representational structures within the region. We want there to be sustainable, effective student association, and are working hard to find that. I recognise everything that Judith said there. It is an incredibly tough job to be a SAB. In any university, to be a sabbatical officer in this university with the geographic spread, it is really a challenging job. That's why a year ago I worked extremely hard to secure a 42% increase in the funding for UHISA at a time when you're all aware of the financial difficulties within the public sector. 42% increase. We got that because of the work of Judith and her colleagues and previous sabbatical teams. So there was that. We created the position of student engagement manager. Kevin's going to arrive in the next few minutes. We, Melissa, instituted this year a number of different support interventions that were required by this year's sabbatical team. There's a whole range of things that we can do, but we are committed to what you're doing, and I don't recognise the picture that's painted in that report about the stance of the university and the support that we've put in place. It's factually inaccurate, and I feel that as much as I sympathise with the plight that Rachel finds herself in just now, we want to avoid undue stress on any member of our staff. We want you to do the same within the UHISA. An important role for Student Council is to hold the sabbaticals and the executive to account. So if there has been underperformance this year, then it's not because it's of a lack of funding from the university or a lack of support. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I think it's fair given the content that UHI got the opportunity to formally respond. Has anybody else from UHISA got anything else to say, or would they like to be formally noted? Michael.
Also, add my best wishes to our current president and hope that she's going to be fit enough to continue in her role of presidency. I've been involved with UHISA, and there are 3 sets of sabbatical officers, and each time, as a lawyer, I have pointed out to succeeding sabbatical officers that we are miles away from our constitution. The way that we conduct our business bears no resemblance to the way we should conduct our business according to the constitution. Fortunately, there's provisions in the constitution to review it, and to the last 2 sets of sabbatical officers I've been nudging, I think is a fair word, along the proposition that we should be gradually looking at certain elements of the Constitution. Not gradually, we should gradually be looking at the whole Constitution, but we should be looking at certain elements of the Constitution very closely and sooner than later. And the principal element of the Constitution that I think would help this situation is what I would call the revival of the executive. We have many provisions in the Constitution concerning the role of the executive. I don't recall the principal rule that we are not obeying is that there should be monthly meetings of the executive. There is support available to the sabbaticals from the executive. We who are elected representatives are elected on to the executive. The executive is the body which should be offering support to and having, as the student council has a supervisory role over the sabbaticals, so also on a month-to-month basis should the executive. So the fundamental thing that I'm saying to the student council is, please can we in the next academic year make sure that we have functioning.
Sorry, can I just say I'm not sure who's whispering, but we can hear you on the.
Sorry, that's us. Yeah.
Just in case you're whispering something we shouldn't be hearing on the VC.
No, I was just saying, I'll just recap and hand over. We're just aware we're picking up on time limits, so I was making a note of Michael's comments and just saying today what was happening next.
Okay.
So, no.
Sorry,
yeah,
there is one further point. Do you think that the Rachel's statement that you just read out could be made available to us in black and white for the afternoon or shortly?
Yeah, if I just recap on that, and sorry again, I wasn't realising that my microphone's on. I'll be more careful with that, but obviously we weren't saying anything we shouldn't have said anyway. Yes, okay, I agree entirely about the Constitution personally. I mean, as you know, Michael, we've been looking at the Constitution and we've been making little suggestions, but I think it needs more. I don't know which button to hit. Damn it. Okay. Dash. Okay. So yeah, Michael and I have been looking at the Constitution this year again, but I agree it needs more than a little dust. I think it needs actually looking at fundamental areas of the Constitution, and I would also say that it's something that I've in fact actually only raised by email again the other day, that the executive, in my opinion, should be a more cohesive team in terms of supporting the sabbaticals, and we need to pull together not just the same few familiar faces, but the entire executive. I don't want to derail this from the original point, so if I just recap on this, just in terms of what I'm feeding back to Rachel, obviously Rachel, I'm sure will be watching the video recording once she's back at work, so she'll be able to see all this in full. But just for the purpose of actually formulating what we've, just recapping what everyone said, after reading the comment from Rachel, it's been noted that it doesn't exactly fit as an accountability report. I think it would be fair to make the text available, as it's going to be public anyway. I can make the text available to anybody who's interested in seeing it, and I can do that as soon as. I wouldn't want to publish it publicly, but if anyone's interested, I could forward it on to them by email. I think that'd be more appropriate, because even though this will eventually be out on YouTube, I think it would be, to put it out there immediately publicly, I think would be inappropriate in the circumstances. But I can forward it on to email. Michael, I'll forward it on to you shortly afterwards. There's comments made about the support elements. Obviously, Ian's made comments from the UHI point of view, and Michael's made comments from the executive point of view about more that can be done to support the sabbaticals there. I think it's fair to acknowledge all Ian's comments about his team and what everyone's done there to support UHISA over the last several years. Those are the main points that I'll be feeding back. I've obviously made scribbles all over. Is there anything else that anybody wants to say? Obviously, the overriding theme in all this is, the support for Rachel in her personal situation, and hope she feels better soon. Luke.
I also wanted to say that I hope that she's feeling better, and I'm looking forward to working with her next year. But there's a couple of times it was mentioned in the report that she felt that she was forced to do things, and I'm not comfortable with that language. I don't understand how anyone can be forced to do something that they aren't comfortable with doing.
Take that. I'd like to pick up just a couple things as well from the perspective. I think the closest perspective that you can have as a stand-in for Rachel, as the person who basically does the other half of her job, we work very closely together. Just for a very minor example of being forced to do something, for example, student council, there's deadlines for the papers, and because of the issues that the fact of Rachel's health, papers did not go out when they were supposed to, and you've obviously noticed this. In fact, they went out about 9:30 on Friday. They went out on 9:30 on Friday because I finished numbering the papers on 9:30 on Friday after leaving my office at 5, getting home, and then working for another 3.5 hours to make sure that those papers went out. Now, arguably, I could have said, well, I'm not working anymore, 5 o'clock, that's it. You can't do that, unfortunately, in this job. There are things that you have to do. It's not being forced to do things that you're necessarily uncomfortable with, but it's things that are necessary. You just can't drop the ball on some things and say, I guess I don't feel like doing that today. It needs to be done, and that's what we're talking about. And I think I want to pick up on a point that Ian made. It's actually something I'm going to talk about if I have time, but unfortunately we're running kind of behind. I want to talk about critical mass. What I've come to think of as the UHISA budget and critical mass, the way it works is it's not a matter of funding to a certain point, because what we don't have and what no amount of money can do is create a 50-hour working day. And you can't, there's only so much that so many people can do. There's only so much time in the day, there's only so much willpower to make these things happen, and that's the problem, is that there is a lot of stuff that needs to be done. And over the years, UHISA has grown I can't think of the word. Exponentially, that's the word. Thank you. It's grown massively, and it's included many more people. But the thing is that growth has also meant that it's being taken more seriously. I'll get to you in a second. It's been taken more seriously, and at the same time, more things have been directed to it to do. So its growth is not. It hasn't really grown in the sense that it now has to do many other things. So its ability to do new things is it keeps track with the new things that are added, and so therefore it never really pulls ahead and can actually do many of the things that it would like to do, because the new responsibilities are added, new committees that need to be attended, that are created, and that these are important things that need to be done. But there's only so much that can be done. I was speaking to somebody very recently about how UHISA started. It started with 1 officer, part-time. Eventually they got up to 2 officers. Oh no, they got to a full-time officer for a start. Then they got to 2 officers. And then they got to 2.5. It's grown. But at the same time, it's not necessarily keeping track with the, shall we call it, workload inflation. And so that kind of covers the bits that I'll talk about later. But that's something that I think is important to know, and that's your point, I think. It's not doing things that you're uncomfortable with. It's doing things that you need to do because you need to do them.
If I think Elsa and Judith had their hands up, if I could just take your points, and then if I could just make my own points as an executive member, and yeah, so Elsa.
I also, like everyone else in the room, feel for Rachel, and as somebody who's also had mental health issues, I can completely understand where she's coming from. But I think we need to be constructive about what this means. And if so many SABs are finding this such a difficult role, 2 things that I immediately think of is that there needs to obviously be perhaps more selectivity about what SABs do with their time, because they're obviously taking on too much. And I don't mean that as a criticism, I just mean that as a reality. I mean, in the workplace, outside of the SAB role, when we get into the workplace, we are all inundated with things we could be doing, but we can't do them all. We have to pick and choose, and we have to say no to a lot of things that we want to do. I think maybe that's one thing we need to look at, time management in that respect. And I agree with Michael's comments that I think maybe we need to look at using the network of the entire executive better. It's obviously not working right now, so I think from my point of view that's what stands out to me.
Thank you. Did you want?
Yeah, mine's actually just a point of clarification for you.
Okay.
I know it might sound insensitive, and that's not my intention, but yes, I would like it to be noted that there's no accountability in the report, but I would also like it to be noted that an accountability report needs to be provided. So when Rachel is well enough to do that, I think that needs to be high on her.
No, I've got that down. Thank you. Actually, Scotty, yeah.
Yeah. Also, wanted to give my acknowledgements for Rachel. Listen, we've only just got these reports, so I think there will need to be another slot provided, at least for the executive, not to be able to read the reports and the operational plan, as well as Noel. I would just sort of, it's been a hell of a year. It's been an absolute hell of a year for myself as well. Also have very similar difficulties, and it's not just UHISA facing these issues as well. Obviously, there are some local students' associations here and there. Very often, none of the officers are paid, or if they are, it's only a couple of hours a week. And again, very much the same. Probably much less training, much less support, if any. It's not just UHISA having these problems. We're all having this. We are literally all in this together. I do think that there'll be light at the end of the tunnel for the following years. So again, best wishes to Rachel.
Yeah. My own point actually echoes a few which have, and this is my own personal point, apart from the side that Rachel's asked me to read this out. Coming at this from my own background and situation with regards to work and everything, I would say a lot of this is a management issue. It is an unfair workload. I completely agree that. But between, like Elsa mentioned, being a bit more selective about what we're focusing on, and Michael's mentioned the support of the executive as well, I think it's bringing those together. And Rachel herself in her report has mentioned the lack of skill set, potentially. She didn't mention the lack of the skill set, but there is. You don't come into this because you're not elected because you've got this experience here and this experience of managing this necessarily. You're elected on your policies and your manifesto. And I think perhaps training and time management and other management issues, and there is the problem that obviously the executive is not line managed by anybody, so of course there's no accountability there for the sabbatical officers to shove a firework up certain areas if people aren't actually doing what they should be doing and be more supportive. So I do think that, and this is on top of all the comments made, and I really, really feel for Rachel and the situation she's in, and I note the accountability issues in light of the Constitution and everything else like that, and that's obviously something that we need to look at. But I think there needs to be the management of this as a whole, and we need to all pull together to actually understand how we're going to do this, because noting the 42% increase from last year, I think we need to be realistic about what other funding we could potentially get, which could be nothing, and I think we need to figure out how we can get through what this situation is. And this is, like Rachel noted in her report, this is nationwide. There's a lot of stress, and I think we need to, and it's interesting that actually there's one of the motions that's coming up is a let's prioritise motion. I think we need to think about that very clearly. I think that's a great motion myself, but I think we need to think about that more broadly in terms of what UHISA does in sabbaticals and how we can offer as much support to them in the most appropriate manner, because I know that UHISA and UHI would want to do that across the board and are already doing it in whatever way they can do. So if everyone's happy with that, then I think that's probably enough conversation on that. Does anybody on VC want to comment? Anybody on VC? No? Okay. Right. Okay. Right. I'll feed those back to Rachel when she's back in the office. So, thanks.